Hey guys, this is James from Man Tripping, and we are here in a special episode of the Men Who Blog wine tasting extravaganza. There's a bunch of different topics I wanted to kind of talk about today, and I've got a new friend that we brought into the fold to explore the world of wine with us. He is Chad from Unfinished Man, and he'll be talking a little bit more about his site. But I think the topic right now, at least for California wines, is the fact that unfortunately most of the state has now gone into lockdown, which means that there are hundreds and hundreds of wineries around the state that are now not able to operate their tasting rooms, which really sucks for a lot of us that enjoy going to tasting rooms because they've done a lot of really good work to invest in making sure things are safe and as good as they possibly can be. But going into the holiday season, it's going to be a crazy next few weeks. Luckily, we've got some wine, and we're going to be drinking Gary Farrell. I have the 2017 Russian River Pinot Noir from the Haldberg Vineyard, and Chad is going to be drinking a 2016, and he'll be telling us a little bit more about his bottle in just a few moments. But overall, guys, just want to make sure that in these times that we're still able to support our local vineyards. I don't object if you buy a Bronco bottle, frankly. Enjoy what you like, drink what you enjoy. But if you can, definitely support your local vineyards, whether that's in California or whether that's in Chad's situation. He's up in Ontario, so I'm sure there's some wonderful vineyards up in Ontario as well. Or, I'm sorry, you're not in Ontario. You're in Quebec.
That's right, but
It's all
very
just like
close.
they say, California. It's all just out, back out west. I guess Canada's just this one big state to
Giant
us 'cause
expanse.
Americans don't know geography. But anyhow, Chad. So what are you drinking? And then tell us a little bit more about
Yeah, sounds
your
good.
site.
So as James was saying, I'm about to try the 2016 Gary Farrell, the Pinot Noir, same as his, very similar. And you want me to talk a little bit about my website?
Yeah, tell us a little about your website. We've been I've been trying to get you on the on our chats a little bit, but there's still these funky border restrictions, and because you're in Canada,
Yeah.
they don't think you like to drink wine. I guess you're just drinking the maple syrup, but and Tim Hortons coffee. But thankfully, the guys at Gary Farrell were able to get you a bottle up there. So I'm thrilled you're able to join us.
Yeah, we have long winters, so I assure you we drink plenty of wine here. That's the only way to make it through. Yeah, but as for the site, so I basically co-run a men's lifestyle website. Started it a little over 10 years ago. We were lucky enough that it really took off, and I've been able to make that my full-time business. So I get to cover all sorts of awesome products like this wine that we're about to enjoy. And it's been quite an adventure over the last 10 or so years.
Cool. Well, I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about, I started liking wine. I started not liking wine. I started just kind of going with my wife about 10 plus years ago. Actually, tomorrow is our 18th anniversary of meeting each other.
Congratulations.
And I was only knowledgeable about that because she mentioned it about 15 times last night. But initially I started going like, oh yeah, I don't mind going to a beautiful farm and enjoying some wine. That's fine, but I wasn't really into it. I've kind of always looked at wine as being something that rich guys collected as a toy, and as kind of like some guys collect Ferraris, some guys collect $100 bottles of wine.
Absolutely.
But then I started realizing that that's not how it has to be. And I just started saying, hey, you know what? I like that wine. I like this wine. I don't know what the hell is that a Cab Franc? I can't even see. Here's what I am. If I was a Somm fancy guy going like, But the reality is
Yeah.
that I'm getting there. I'm getting there through experience. I'm getting there through passion. But when it started out, it was just kind of like, yeah, I like that red. Give me more of it. Or I like that white. Give me more of it. And over time, I started realizing that wine is approachable. Wine, it can be approachable. Wine should be fun. Wine has all these these wonderful aspects that integrate well into the content that I was already writing about on my site, the things that I already love. Whether that's if you're a guy who loves computer games, well, you understand the complexity and the role of a faster mouse, a faster keyboard,
Yeah.
proper posture, and people can get really nerdy into video games. Where a lot of people think that video games are just like, oh yeah, just some 14-year-old kid who's quicker.
Sure.
Well, there is that 14-year-old kid playing Fortnite who can whoop your butt. But the reality is that 14-year-old kid versus a 30-year-old guy that has the right practice and the right keyboards and that kind of stuff, can be a great player too. And so, when you start looking at these nerdy little things, start realizing how complex it is, everything gets more approachable.
I think what you were saying though was spot on. It's just like many people see it as something that is not approachable, that the bar is too high, it's too confusing, and obviously that's not true. There's so many options for all sorts of palettes and price points, and it really doesn't need to be as complicated as people think it is.
Well, welcome, Tom. Speaking of approachable, Tom is Mr. Approachable.
It's nice to see you, James. Nice to see you, Chad.
Hey.
And happy Sunday to everybody.
Thank you.
I was going to open a bottle of wine, and I have several, and I know we're going to have some great wine later this week, James. But I thought on the wine and whiskey theme, because we think about these days, how can we tie in both? And there's some really wonderful wines being aged in used bourbon and whiskey barrels. And then there's some really wonderful whiskeys being finished, as we call it, when you put it into that secondary cask in used wine barrels. So the one that I was tasting the other night, I went ahead and ground a little of the whiskey world, a little of the wine world. It's called Derringer. It's from Rabbit Hole in Louisville, Kentucky. And they take their really wonderful bourbon and they finish it in PX Pedro Jimenez sherry cask. And it's really dynamite. It's really tasty. Really softens out the flavor. And that's very elegant, whether it's with a cigar, cheese, or whatever it might be. But we've seen this as a trend for a number of years. Put that bottle back
up again?
Oh, absolutely, sure. Take a sip. Here we go. That's the Derringer. It's Rabbit Hole, really beautiful bottle. It's really well awarded whiskey in Louisville, Kentucky. They started it about four years ago, I believe, somewhere around there. But it's really amazing stuff. And they have several other expressions of bourbon and rye, and they have some great gin that's barrel aged in bourbon barrels. And they really they're doing great work. One of the bourbons that really started the whole thing out with wine aging, there's others that did it many years ago, but was, of course, Angel's Envy, which I'm really big fan of Angel's Envy. James, you and I had some a few weeks ago. But, of course, I love wine. I love whiskey. I love it all.
Well, we were just talking about that wine has a reputation sometimes of being unapproachable, and that's really not how it is. Some wines clearly are unapproachable, and some wines clearly are insanely expensive. Right. I just looked at a celebrity wine last night that I was talking about. That, I mean, all Napa cabs are I shouldn't say all, because frankly I had a really nice one the other day, but all Napa cabs are just frankly overpriced. And Napa's built this reputation for being, kind of that foo-foo wine industry, that they've got great shit. It's a great place for growing cab, but it's not the best in the world by any means. Right. It just has a reputation for having really expensive people doing stuff. But this bottle was a $300 bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, and I can guarantee that it was not worth $300. But because the celebrity's name was on it, it was. And I'm sure because and actually I have the proof, because the wine ratings on there, like Wine Spectator only gave this a 90 points. And in the nerdy world that I'm living in now, like 90 points is not spectacular.
But it's commanding that huge premium.
Yeah. And that's unapproachable, because there's fantastic 95, 96 point wines that'll be half the price or a third the price that you can get if you look around and you kind of go into the store or into the into a tasting room with the mentality that I want to learn. I'm open to learning. I want to try different things, and I think that's where a lot of guys who may not consider themselves wine guys need to start. If you're at a party and you've got an open bar, well, it doesn't cost you anything. If you get a Cab Franc and you don't like it, well, just set it down on a tray somewhere and try the the Cabernet Sauvignon instead.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that one you were talking about, you got to try it. It was $300, but if you had to guess, what would you have guessed at the price point?
Well, I actually I did not get to try.
Okay.
I had heard about it, and I understand it's a pretty good tasting wine. I mean, I think you can't put shit in the bottle at $300.
Right.
But and the reality is, as you start looking at that, I think I kind of feel like there's a collective, tiers of wines that really under $25. It's a mass market product. That's a mass market product. From 25 to 60 maybe, you start getting kind of a really good sweet mid range of good wines. But once you start going above $50-$60, I kind of feel like there really are some nuances as to why the wines are more expensive. Right. It's not necessarily the grape in the bottle that's superior, but there's little things like, does it make you feel good that you're drinking a bottle that has, Drew Bledsoe or Yao Ming or or Mario Lemieux? I mean, I don't even know if he has a wine or not, but does it make you feel good when you have his name on a bottle? Right. And that's not a judgment call. I mean, but that name on the bottle is worth something. Whether it's worth an extra $10, an extra $200, who knows? But I really want to go into that topic kind of deeper later, kind of comparing to like a really expensive bottle and a really cheap bottle. But we'll have to figure out who wants to throw us a $150, $200 bottle and put it next to
compare
to a $20 bottle.
Yeah.
I think those are so blind tastings, blind comparisons are so important. To actually be able to do those and to have a $20 and a $200 bottle side by side. Sometimes even there's been some research done. Cambridge University did one several years ago where they had wine sommeliers. They told them, hey, this wine is $300 bottle, and they actually perceived it in their minds even better. They had these pleasure sensors hooked up to their head. So.
That sounds fun to have pleasure sensors hooked up to my head.
Yeah,
we're working on something for that.
Maybe they gave the pleasure back to them. Who knows?
Who knows? But no, but that's definitely true. But at the same time, this is not unique to wine. I think whiskey has definitely followed this as well. Is it Belfour? I think we tasted it a few months ago.
That's wonderful stuff.
And that was clearly a celebrity whiskey as well.
Yeah.
But it was damn good. Frankly, I knew the name Belfour because I was a hockey fan and I lived in Boston, and who wouldn't? But I didn't place it as being a celebrity whiskey when they first approached me and when I first tried it. And I think that's kind of the key. That are you drinking a celebrity whiskey that is a celebrity whiskey because you're really like, oh, I'm drinking, and I'm so out of the sports world I can't even think of anything,
I thought it was really good. I had the rye up here. I've had a little bit of it, as you see, but I've been kind of saving it because I thought it was so nice, and a cool old school bottle too,
and a fantastic PR person.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Laura's been a great partner for Tom and I for, God, I don't know, but for me probably more than 10 years.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Laura's the best. She's really amazing.
I'll have to get you hooked. I can't remember. Chad, you're not really a whiskey guy, though, are you?
Not so much. I'm quite into cocktails. I like clear spirits, some dark stuff too, but less so for sure. But I'll try anything. So.
Well, maybe Laura and I can't remember the. I mean, there was Mr. Belfour, I guess. I can't remember his first name, but I'm sure if we set something up that they would play ball. But that was a really good. It was a pecan whiskey, which had a really nice notes of and it wasn't sweet. Like there's some. I don't mean this with derision because I've really had a lot of fun on pontoon boats, but there's some pontoon boat flavored whiskeys out there that I don't enjoy sitting at my desk, working. But but this was one of those ones that was not syrupy, just had a really nice notes of stuff. So, but
it was so good. Ed Belfour. They're going to have their own. From what I understand, they're bringing their operation I don't think they ever said exactly where, but it's going to be closer to where I'm at in border of Indiana, Kentucky. But yeah, I was really amazed how unique both the rye and the bourbon were. I think it's amazing stuff, and we've been so lucky to try a lot of amazing stuff, and we'll continue to do these virtual tastings, and we're going to be tasting some great stuff on Wednesday. It sounds like.
Yeah, we've got Tolosa Winery, and in the great pantheon of California wine regions, it's funny because I get friends who say, "Oh, I'm coming to California for a wine tasting or wine vacation." I go, "Where are you going?" They go say, "Wine country." With all due respect, like wine country in California extends from about 30 miles south of the border in Baja California,
Right.
to, I mean, there's probably some guys in the Emerald Triangle who are making combinations of wine and cannabis, but literally the entire state is a wine country.
So it's a little vague.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inevitably, they're referring to Napa, Sonoma, which
Sure.
frankly I hate the fact that it's Napa and Sonoma because they're radically different regions.
Right.
But when you think about all these wine regions, you don't really think about San Luis Obispo. But San Luis Obispo and the Mount Edna, Edna, is it Mount Edna or is it just Edna Valley? I think it's Edna Valley. Is rapidly emerging as a fantastic place for Pinot Noir, and Tolosa Winery is going to be doing a tasting with us to talk more about some of their stuff. And we had the fortune to visit there just before everything went to shit again.
Yeah.
But that's good. And we have we're working with the Cab Collective to set up a tasting coming up in early January, talking about the role of sustainability and comparing terroir, because it's one of the things that again, to some people it's a little bit nerdier than they like. I mean, I have a friend who's like, yeah, I only drink red blends. Fine, go ahead and drink a red blend. I personally think it's really interesting though that you can have a Cab or a Pinot Noir that's in an area with sandy soils versus a limestone soil. And they're the same damn grape fundamentally. I mean, they may even come from the same vine clones, but the one in the limestone soil is going to be radically different than the one from the hot sandy soils, and that's something we're going to be exploring. But
Absolutely. And I want to, before I forget, and I'm so excited about this. We was talking about, you mentioned Napa and Sonoma, and we got to do one with these guys too, James. I know I've been telling you about it for a while. When it comes to the crossover of whiskey and wine, Dave Finney, who created the Prisoner and so many great wines in the Orange Swift collection, created this distillery a couple of years ago called Savage and Cook. And my buddy Jordan Vai is master distiller there, used to be at Breckenridge and still does some there too. But they do it a Second Glance is the one that you see out there a lot. It's a great bottle. And Burning Chair, they're all finished in used Dave Finney wine barrels. It's whiskey finished in Dave Finney wine barrels. It's delicious, and I have so many great things in front of me. I wanted to make sure I mentioned this one too, because if people are looking for a really interesting finished whiskey, this is amazing, and you're going to get such a kick out of this. And I know James and probably Chad, you're both going to want one of these. This is Bad Sweater whiskey. It actually has a bad sweater on it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And to make it even better, they give you some places give you a bad sweater with it. That's a real bad sweater, mini bad sweater. It's flavored with like brown sugar, and it's like Christmas in a bottle. It's so freaking good. They do. I don't know. This looks like somebody shrunk, like really had a bad day at the dry cleaners.
Well, when it comes to the barrel aged wines and the whiskeys that are done in the inverse,
Yeah.
it kind of makes me clearly you've done port cask and sherry cask finish for a while. I mean, I think that Ingalls Envy was a port cask finish, and you're seeing rums done the same way. But are you seeing similar stuff with a Cabernet finish or that kind of stuff versus just kind of the heavier, sweeter wines?
Am I seeing? Kind of cut out there for a moment. Are you seeing a variety of types of wines that are on the barrel
Well, no.
finish?
So,
Is that
so
what you're asking?
typically, when you hear about a whiskey that is cask finished, you think of it as a sherry cask finished or a port cask finished. I think I've seen Madeira, but the thing that all three of them, well, I guess sherry is not technically fortified; it's just more of just a little sweeter
Yeah,
wine. But all of those have a stronger flavor that's going to stand up to the whiskey.
they do.
Are you seeing other varieties of wine that are being aged there, like for instance a Cabernet Sauvignon cask finished?
Yes, yeah. The one I just showed you actually is Cab Sauvignon from Dave Finney, one of his estates, and the one that they have, I think, the most of. I don't have it right in front of me. It's called Lip Service, and it's a 3-year-old rye whiskey that's finished in Grenache barrels from France, and it's very cocktail-esque. It's very it has a nice thick nature to it, but approachable. Just extremely interesting. I've seen a variety of kinds. For many, many years, our friends at wow, I don't know if I have it right in front of me. I thought I did. Stratahans in Denver have been finishing a variety of cognac and a lot of different wines they've been using for their finishes, even mead for their single malt. Same story with Town Branch in Louisville. They're playing around with it a lot. So.
It's interesting. I had a conversation with I can't remember I think it was just the marketing guy, not the winemaker, but he certainly understood the winemaking process well enough that he probably makes his own wine on the side at Hook and Ladder up in Sonoma. And it seems like there's a new generation of winemakers that are deciding, hey, you know what? Just because we've made Cab Franc for the same way for 500 years doesn't mean we have to make it the same way for the next 100 years.
Right.
And there's a lot of change going on in the industry in terms of that. So I'm looking forward to some of these things. Although unlike making an experimental infusion or experimental flavored vodka or something like that, to make an experimental wine, you're looking at an investment that isn't gonna show results for 3 years.
Right. Yes, that's true. It's it's the fun part of it is the crossover. There's even some bourbons that are put in used beer barrels and vice versa. I mean, I think it's the crossover. It's taking that barrel. The barrel is already such a magical element of what happens to spirits, wines, beers, mead, everything. But it's taking what the influence of that barrel is and then influencing something else. So it's kind of like how all of us rub off on each other. In some sort of good energy personality sense with people of good taste, so do these spirits and these beverages of good taste, and we continue to see that. And I think the crossover and the interlockings of all of these are just going to give us more and more tasty things to drink. I certainly hope so. I think that it seems like every time it used to be when I started this bourbon blog 15 or so years ago, only a new bourbon or two a month would appear, but I mean, there's just no end of new stuff in the wine sense too. I mean, you have no end of new ones.
But that type of experimentation is what's so exciting too. I think people coming up with just wild stuff that you would not necessarily think that would work, and you try it, and you're just like, that's really interesting. At least, even if it's not for you, it's like, okay, I don't quite like this, or maybe I love it, but I can appreciate that it's something really different.
Right.
I find that kind of thing really exciting.
Oh yeah,
Me too.
Oh, yeah. I think so.
And I wonder how much of that is and I don't know what the wine industry was like 20 years ago, much less 200 years ago, but I kind of wonder if 20, 30, 40 years ago the wine industry kind of stayed in its lane, and the distilling industry kind of stayed in its lane, and the beer industry kind of stayed in its lane. But now, like last summer I was up in Russian River at Russian River Vineyards, going for a wine tasting, and the guys, had the tasting room manager take me in a cart out to the middle of the vineyard, and the first thing he did was grab a beer and hand me a beer. I'm like, well, I'm here in your vineyard to talk about your wine, but it was very clear that the experience he wanted to convey was the fact that the winemaking for him is not just about grapes, that it's about the experience of the field, the experience about after I'm sweaty and working in the vineyard, do I want to just grab a glass of a glass of Chardonnay or a glass of Pinot Noir, or would an ice cold beer from Russian River Brewing be more appropriate? And I'm like, well, I can't argue with that. That a hot day under the sun, a glass of wine really isn't the best thing. But an ice cold beer, heck yeah. And so it was very clear that at least for him, that that winemaking was fully integrated with the brewing industry up there. And I wonder if that's a new trend or something that maybe the monks in Belgium were also brewing beer and inventing wine, and they had that kind of innovation, but for somewhere along the line we didn't connect the dots.
And honestly, why not?
Yeah.
God bless the Catholic Church, honestly. Like, he had the Catholic Church in some of the worst times in Western civilization that were, brewing beer, inventing wine, distilling spirits, all the name of Jesus, and and God bless them for doing that.
And now we benefit.
Well, if you like wine, you might like
on a Sunday, nonetheless.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers,
now,
guys.
what kind of wine do both of you have? I may have missed it.
So I have the 2017 Gary Farrell Pinot Noir, and I actually found the tasting notes for it. It's at 95 points from Wine Enthusiast. It's a 2017 Hallberg Vineyard. One of the things that's really unique about Gary Farrell is the fact that they may have their own vineyards too. Certainly, they have this beautiful tasting room that I have in back of me, which unfortunately now is closed. But instead of having, one Pinot Noir or two Pinot Noirs, they have this huge, vast selection of different Pinot Noirs from different vineyards around Sonoma, and it's just, I'm getting nerdy. I'm trying to fight back to maintain my love of the game, but when I see they have, 4, 6, 8, I don't know how many numbers they have that are all Russian River vineyards, but they're all different. They're all Pinot Noirs, but this one comes from the Hallberg Vineyard, and it said the 2017 Hallberg Pinot Noir opens with lush aromas of dark cherries, summer strawberries, blackberry jam, generous layers of black tea, freshly foraged mushrooms, and dried tobacco. And there's a lot of ands in here. And olives provide a balance of a decadent fruit profile. So this was named after the previous owners. The 100-acre Hallberg Vineyard today is owned and managed by the wine industry veterans, including vineyard manager Kirk Lokai. Nestled in the Green Valley sub-appellation, the site enjoys, and I'm going to, if you want to read more, you can read more. I'll paste this into the thing. But I'm really enjoying Gary Farrell. This is my second bottle that I've had from them, and I dig the fact that they're pretty approachable, but they're technically excellent, and it's a great opportunity to just go and pick up 2 or 3 bottles from them. If you like Pinot, and obviously grab a friend, because I'm not going to encourage you to drink 3 bottles in an evening, but
be a bit of work.
when COVID's over, grab Chad and Tom, and we'll all get together and we'll do a tasting. But even without COVID, or even with COVID rather, if you have your wife or your husband or something like that, go and grab a couple bottles and taste the difference between the Hallberg Vineyard versus something else. And it's a great way to explore. So I am very privileged that they contacted me, and I look forward to working more with them in the future. But Chad, you have the 2016 from a different thing. I couldn't find the 2016 on. Maybe that's a Canada exclusive vintage.
Yeah, I couldn't either, unfortunately. I'm going to dig that up and publish it after. But I am very much enjoying this bottle as well. So yeah, as James was saying, this is the 2016 bottle of Pinot Noir as well. Oh, there we go. No. And I'm going in this completely blind, so I feel like I'm going to embarrass myself a little bit, but it really reminds me of caramel, which I'm super enjoying. This is eminently drinkable, and if I'm wrong, I apologize, but it tastes fantastic.
What was the vineyard?
Hallberg.
Oh, okay, so it might be actually the same vineyard then.
So I will look that up again. I don't want to be clacking away here on my very loud keyboard, but absolutely excellent so far.
I haven't.
Was that a swipe at my very loud mechanical keyboard?
No, mine's mechanical as well, and it's obnoxiously loud. So I'm trying not to be smacking away at it.
So according to
You're where in Canada are you, Chad?
So I'm in Montreal. So
Wow.
Quebec.
That's great.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So wine.com lists yours. It is currently unavailable, but again, technically excellent. I mean, both of them are very, very approachable. This one has, 94 from Wine Enthusiast, 94 from Decanter, 92 from Robert Parker, 92 from Wine Spectator, 90 from Wine and Spirits. So, and I think the notes are fairly similar. I'm not going to bore you guys with the long reading of the notes like
Fair.
I just did with my 2017. But, overall, I think that's one fun thing about wine is that if you like it, just fucking drink it.
Absolutely.
But if you want to get nerdy and go like, I'm really looking for wine that accentuates the currents. Okay, well then you know what? You can find one, and go talk to your local somm, go talk to your local wine shop. I'm blessed by having a lot of PR people contact me and pitch wines and that kind of stuff. But the reality is, as good as online sites are for selling wine, the local guy in your local wine shop is probably even more experienced and can tell you those things that Google simply is not able to tell you at this point. But
right.
Just support all levels of the industry at this point.
Well, I think it's almost like choosing a good sound system. You can read all the specs, you can look at all the reviews, but at the end of the day, you just have to go and listen to a whole bunch and see what sounds good to you. And I think the same thing is true of wine. Just try a whole bunch. Most of them are pretty approachable, I would say. I'm not completely ashamed to say that I've gone through phases of just label shopping. And you know what? That's worked out beautifully for me. Yeah. Upon occasion, I'll find something that's stellar. People just need to try more and figure out what they like.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And to an extent, there's certain wines that, like, after having two wines from them, and I have, I think, 2 more bottles. I have a Chardonnay and I have another Pinot Noir left. I would hands down just go and buy another Gary Farrell wine.
Absolutely.
Even from a different vineyard, I think it's just a really nice. But at the same time, and I do the same thing for Tobin James. I know, Tom, you're a Tobin James Wine Club member.
Yeah, I love the Tobin. Yes.
But at the same time, sometimes it's fun just to kind of say like, hey, try this other one that I never heard of, and you find out that there's different personalities in there, and that doesn't make one better than the other. I mean, there's certainly, if Wine Spectator ranks one a 10 and one a 90, well, there's probably some technical differences, and one's probably better than the other. However, the reality is we could have 5 wines sitting in front of us, and Tom could be absolutely dead set that wine number 4 is the best of the bunch, and I could not like it. And so, your speaker shopping analogy was perfect for that, because
I love that. Yeah.
But
I love seeing the. What? No, I was going to say I love seeing what different people like and saying, if we have 5 in front of us, here's what I like about it. I mean, things that I look for on a wine. Sometimes I like kind of that older note, a lot more barrel. There is that thing that I actually like. Sometimes they call it petrol, right? It has that little. It's because of the chemical, a little bit of that petrol thing that happens on a wine. I like that sometimes. It's interesting though to really see what people find approachable and what they enjoy. Yeah, I think 5 is a good number to have in front of you. It's just kind of like whiskeys and tasting several and really seeing as what really speaks to you.
The only problem with having 5 wines in front of you versus 5 bottles of spirits is that I feel really bad because I can open a bottle. I can open a bottle of whiskey. Like I have a bottle. It's actually a really nice California distillery. It's from Redwood Distillery.
Yeah.
The funny thing, the bottle I have now is like you can tell that they have been successful because the bottle that I have versus the bottle that they sell now is very much a version 1.0.
Okay.
But I can 4 years later I can still enjoy it. But the reality is I got to drink this today.
You don't really have a choice.
I mean, the challenges of doing what we do.
Yeah.
And there are some things. I mean, I do have some vacuum stuff, and I've been asking Santa for a Coravin, even though one of the winemakers was saying, like, if you're only drinking bottles that are under $150, you don't need a Coravin. And to me, a $150 bottle is, oh my God, that's, what am I going to do here? But that's not even touching the surface when it comes to the wines that people with Coravins are tasting.
It's not always about need either.
Yeah. Well, and for those of you who are wondering what the hell a Coravin is, Chad and Tom, you both know what Coravin is. I
actually don't. Yeah. So
okay.
Please inform me.
Okay, so a Coravin was invented by a vein surgeon who was looking for a way to sample wines without injecting, without exposing the wines to oxygen. Because once a wine starts oxygenating, it does open up. It does get good, but it doesn't. You're not able to keep it safe for a long time. So this tiny little needle that was originally used for vein surgery, it gets injected into the cork, and then the wine's able to be extracted without actually getting any oxygen exposed to the wine itself.
Very cool.
Because the needle is so small, instead of punching through the cork, it actually separates the cork so that when it's removed, the cork seals back up again.
Ah.
And they're not that expensive. I think they're like $200, maybe $300. But I mean, it's kind of one of those things that if you're, don't buy a $300 wine tool for a $50 bottle.
Sure.
And even at a $150 bottle, that's not a big deal. But the world that exists out there that I'm not even touching at this point, of people who are buying, $500 bottles and buying a case of it and then putting it in their cellar that they built out for $100,000 cellar, and they're gonna let it sit there for for 20 years.
Yeah,
that's that market exists out there.
The first time I ever saw Coravin was with you, James. I don't know if you remember this. It was it might have been 5 or 6 years ago. You, I, and Heather were in we were in a wine bar in San Diego. I can't remember the name of it. I think we had been doing beers that day too, and that was the first time I ever saw one. And I think it's an amazing tool that can really help.
Yeah, I'm going to pop it up on the screen for everybody. I am not sponsored by them. It's just something that I think is a cool device.
It is
for wine tasting rooms. It's a great opportunity too, because that way they can give a very measured supply without having to open up an entire bottle. But as you see here, I guess, holy cow, they're cheap now. The Coravin Pivot, that must be new, $99.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
I'm not sure how that big needle works, but here the Model 3, I think it's the more typical model. You can see it's got a very, very tiny pin there, and you put that around the neck of the bottle, and it's got is it argon, maybe?
Yes.
Makes sense because it's inert.
So, I think they're doing some holiday specials. I know last year that like Bed Bath & Beyond, there were quite a few good specials on them. But they are very easy and nice to use, just to really allow yourself to have a little sip of that wine. And then, I mean, there's been some studies out there that say that a few weeks later it's about the same. Even months later, it can be about the same if you don't take too much out of it. I've experimented a little bit with it. I actually have one. I got one last year when they were on a really good sell at Bed Bath & Beyond. I think it doesn't change it a whole lot after a few weeks. I don't think that the complexity changes a whole lot. You probably wouldn't want to wait many, many months or take too much out of it, but it does a good job.
I'm sorry. No, that was you did get a Coravin or something else you got?
I did. No, I got a Coravin. They were on I can't remember the deal, but it was a really good special last year at Bed Bath & Beyond. They had them, and I got one last year for Christmas, just for myself, pretty much.
Gotcha.
And for Annabelle, anyone who wants to drink wine with me.
So aside from having to replace the argon cartridges, these are fully reusable.
Yeah. You just got to replace the argon.
Okay.
And I assume at some point you're going to have to, the needles are going to break, or needles are going to, as far as the argon's a consumable.
Sure. Yeah, I need to get one.
So, Mr. PR people for Coravin, if you happen to be watching, we would love to demonstrate one on the air. But
Yes.
we're approaching 40 minutes now. But I think one of the things I really wanted to talk about also, and this is something that is special for Gary Farrell too, but kind of the changing roles of men and women in the wine industry. Depending on who I talk to, I get reactions of like, "What do you mean? Men dominate the industry?" Or, "No, you're absolutely right. We should be involving more men in the industry." And it's really, when I first started seeing that divergent reaction, I was confused. But I started realizing that the wine retail industry and the upper end of the wine industry are two radically different groups of people. And so, clearly, if you look around at the leadership of the industry and the leadership of the vineyards, it's almost exclusively, fathers passing it down to their sons, and their sons becoming the winemakers, and ultimately the son, taking over the management of the winery and training their sons to be the winemakers. Whereas if you look at wine retail marketing, I mean, things like Barefoot, things like, think back to your moms and grandmas that were drinking, white Zin back in the day. I mean, clearly it's dudes grabbing some whiskey and some beers, and the girls enjoying the wine back in the house, which is an unfair assumption because, and Tom, you and I both know a lot of women who absolutely love whiskey. I know Annabelle enjoys whiskey. I know Heather enjoys whiskey, and there's some fantastic. Is it the whiskey chick or whiskey? Was it Bourbon Girls? There's somebody that I've seen on Twitter.
There's a lot of them, yeah. I may have told you the story. I'm not sure if you've heard it, Chad, but I actually met Annabelle in a bar. My wife, she approached me and bought me a bourbon.
That's fantastic.
That's how it happened. So I mean,
she's a keeper.
almost 12 years ago this past Sunday.
That's awesome.
About 12 years ago, exactly. Yeah, she bought me a drink in a bar, a bourbon, in fact.
Another holiday romance.
That's right. You got it.
I think before you came on, I was saying that Monday is our 18th anniversary meeting.
Congratulations! I remember you said it was December. Now, how did you guys meet? That's so cool, James and Heather.
So the reality is that we met because I had gotten out of a. Well, I guess it's been 18 years now, so I can say she was crazy as shit. But it was an interesting situation, and I was kind of in a fuck it mood. I was like, I was sitting there going, hey, you know what? I'm not going to start dating the people who I thought I wanted. I was always looking for like, okay, she has to like Star Trek, she has to like, she has to like this, she has to be into video games, and it honestly it just never worked. And so I said, like, F it. Like, I've never dated a Jewish girl. I've never dated a redhead. I've never dated a black girl. And Heather was the redhead. Wow. And so, she's not redhead now. I don't know what happened there, but I guess as we all change, things happen. She's still a little bit redhead. She's still fiery like a redhead. I mean, Tom, you've met her. She can kick my ass if she wanted to. But it was the end of the year, and in DC, literally, once the 15th of the month is over, everybody goes home because DC is a horrible place to be in the winter. It's just it's cold and it's wet and it's windy, and that's just never a combo. So, instead of dating online like we had with other people, and then deciding, okay, after a week or two of chatting, let's go out. It was kind of a, hey, it's Friday, just to hell with it. Yeah, we'll just meet up. And so we did, and it worked out.
So that was a good experiment.
It was a good experiment. I never. Who knows what would have happened with the other women? But I hope they found theirs because I found mine.
Yes.
So, but when it comes to the wine industry of the changing roles, it's interesting because now Gary Farrell has a female winemaker who, I mean, this is fantastic, and she did a great job on this. But I look around and say, like, what? I hate diversity for the sake of diversity. I don't want to buy a wine because it's made by a Frenchman. Yep. I don't want to buy a wine because it's made by a guy from Italy. I don't want to buy a wine just because it's made by a woman. But at the same time, I feel like somebody who has a traditional French background is going to create a different wine than a guy who or a woman who came from a different background, and that's what I think is really exciting about the industry, and it kind of parallels what we were talking about before as far as the integration and stuff. So I don't really know a lot about her background, but excited to see those kind of changes.
I think it should be highly encouraged and not forced.
Yeah,
that's my opinion, and I think we're going to get a lot more exciting stuff out of that, as we've sort of been talking about for this whole show.
Yes.
And so I was speaking with a winemaker. Actually, it's a Mexican lady who owns the wine called Enrique Family Vineyards, and they are up in it's either Sonoma or Napa, somewhere in the Greater Bay Area. And it's interesting because I was originally thinking, okay, well, it's a Mexican family that they maybe they evolved from, not evolved from, but grew out of the tradition in the vinadors and the workers in the fields, and it wasn't. It was a completely different path to owning a winery, but nonetheless, she's able to draw from her family's agricultural traditions and heritage in Mexico, and I'm really excited to check them out as well, because it's going to be different. Just like when you go to, I'm sure I don't know, does Cab even grow well in Montreal? Probably not, but
I'm skeptical.
Montreal may be too radical of a different domain, but
yeah,
I can have a Cabernet Sauvignon from Georgia, the state, and a Cabernet Sauvignon from California, and a Cabernet Sauvignon from Michigan. And they're all three going to be radically different, not just because of the terroir, but because of the mentality and the attitude of the winemaker and the farm and the culture that they came from. So hopefully we start seeing more of these kind of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
So as we kind of go into the wrap-up mode, one of the things that I think is really important is supporting our local wineries and supporting the producers on a local basis. I'm obviously very passionate about California, and I put together that roundup, which turned into an absolute monster. I've never published an article that's 8,000 words, but I was expecting to have maybe a dozen people contribute, and instead I got almost 50 people who contributed, including, ironically, I scrubbed it last night and I actually had 2 people who contributed twice, where they were so passionate that I had a tasting room manager submit the entry, and then I also had the owner of the winery submit an entry for the same place, and so I had to scrub that a little bit. But when I was talking to you earlier before we went on, it really kind of reminded me that while I'm sensitive to California wineries and the huge industry it is here, reality is there's wineries and tasting rooms that are closed in Montreal. There's one in Quebec. Then there's Tom. I don't know if there's wineries. There's got to be wineries in southern Indiana, but
yeah, there are. There's some nice ones. There's some decent wines made in Indiana and Kentucky both. There's some really good stuff.
So as we look at that, it's really a global thing, and probably more of I feel like it's more of a North American thing, because I feel like when I've been to France and Germany, that the wineries are more industrial and less boutique and less tasting room focused. So what are people doing in Montreal to adapt, and what are you seeing up there?
Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do right now. So pretty much everything is closed down here. And what you're seeing with the bars, at least, is that they are able to do delivery of things like cocktails, which is great. Whether or not that sustains them is a whole other thing. But it's a real challenge. And I think that this is going to be, unfortunately, a challenge for at least a few more months. And when these places are able to open up again, it's going to be up to the community to really get out there and support them. We all enjoy these institutions during the good times, especially during the summers here. It's amazing, all the breweries and the vineyards and such. But it's a tough year, and I don't envy the position they're in. I'll be interested to see how things look in 2021. That's what I would say.
Now, at this point, are all the tasting rooms closed, I'd imagine, including, well, I guess
Yes.
outdoor is probably a lot less doable than
Yeah,
it is here in Southern California.
it's actually not too cold here yet, but we're quickly reaching that point, and they are all closed, unfortunately, and have been for a number of months. So
are the
yeah, it's a
provincial
tough
laws
situation.
are the provincial laws kind of being a little bit softer to allow things like individual delivery and local delivery and those kind of things, or is it pretty much?
Yeah, they are being pretty flexible with that. I think that's quite encouraged. I haven't seen any tasting rooms doing that, to be honest. I've seen a few local bars. I don't know why that hasn't been pushed more. That would be my advice to anybody that's going through this right now, is the winemakers and such, if they could set something up. But I know it's an ongoing challenge.
I know here in Temecula, even there's which is a wine region just north of San Diego. One of the winemakers like, if you order a box, I'll go around and do delivery. I'll do, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. And I started realizing that in Sonoma and Napa and San Luis Obispo, other winemakers are doing the same thing, where it's the winemakers are really stepping up, and the wine communities are really stepping up with that, as well as doing some virtual tastings. And I know, I don't know if you ever heard of Broken Earth, Tom. I know you've been to Paso a few times.
Oh yeah.
Broken Earth does fantastic stuff. They have a winery, but they built this amazing tasting room that's also almost a conference center. Like you could hold a massive like 200 person birthday party there if you wanted to. But they have a special right now for $5 shipping for California and $10 for outside the state.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow. No, the Broken Earth. I think I've had some of those. They're really good. And you know what? I really hope to be in Montreal in the new year. I have not been to Montreal. I've been other areas in Canada, but I really hope to be there at some point.
Well, you'll love it. I'll show you around.
I would love that. I'm going to try it. I don't know if I'll do it. J'espère être à Montréal bientôt. I hope to be in Montreal soon. I don't know if I did it right.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Do you speak a little French too?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I'm
always practicing, if I can. I have a friend that started a new restaurant in Montreal. I'll have to send you the information on it.
Please do.
The problem, Tom, is that the Quebecois don't speak French properly.
You don't? Well, I don't
say
either,
that too loudly.
I'm still trying.
Well, I can say that here. It's just don't turn up your audio.
Yeah.
No, I mean, as somebody, I speak French enough to get myself in trouble. And the French that I heard spoken up there, I understand the words, but it wasn't. It'd be the equivalent of going from here to Louisiana and listening to a guy speak English.
Sure. You did fine.
That being said, if you want to hear some odd French, God bless them. When I was down in Cajun country down in Lafayette, the French being spoken down there was like Ebonics compared to American French, or not American French, but continental French.
Yeah.
So, but Tom, what's going on down in Indiana? Are they? And I feel like Indiana's going to be a little bit more laissez-faire than perhaps California or Montreal. But is everything closed down there, or what are they doing to adapt?
I wish I could tell you 100% for sure. I know it changes week by week. We're doing all we can to support the restaurants and bars, doing cocktails to go restaurants. Those are still available. I know it's a smaller capacity for indoor restaurant, but the indoor dining is still happening in a smaller capacity. And we're just all trying to be safe and support the hospitality community the best we can.
Cool. Now, how did the liquor tasting room industry adapt down there? Because I know in California they passed some weird. They got lumped. Unlike the wineries who could open without food, the liquor industry got lumped in with the bar industry.
Yeah. And
it was like I wanted to do a tasting because Paso has some phenomenal distilleries, and I wanted to do a tasting tour. And they said, well, in order to do a tasting, you have to buy a lunch. So immediately a tasting which would have been $5 or $10 suddenly becomes $25, $30, which is fantastic for their bottom line. That's wonderful that they can get the extra margin dollars. But the reality is, like, I can't eat 3 lunches. I could, but I shouldn't eat 3 lunches per day. And so I didn't get a chance to really do the tastings the way I wanted to. But did they have any rules
I
like
know
that in India?
It has a kind of it's shifted here and there. I know most recently in Kentucky, where the distilleries are, the whole story was they could do limited tours, but the tasting rooms were closed. Gift shops were open. I'm not sure what the latest is. It really changes so often. I know that everybody had tried to do limited tours and some tastings, but for the most part, I think the tastings were sort of off the table because you have to take your mask off. But I don't know what the latest is, actually.
Well, let's hope that we are able to adapt.
Yes.
I'll leave you guys with the kind of the link to the article I put together. That really, it was wonderful to see all the different ways that the California wine industry is adapting, and I look forward to. Well, it's a nice ad for Wolverine there, one of our favorite shoe companies. But as the industry kind of comes together, there's so much diversity in the industry and so many different ways that they're adapting. It was kind of unfortunate that, how do you illustrate an article about the fact that wineries are shut down when, who wants to do a picture of a guy with a delivery van?
Right.
But
Yeah.
the industry here did so many really unique and fun things to adapt to make it safe. Like, how cool is that? You have a palm tree with a bunch of beach balls and that kind of stuff. But you can see that they did a great job. This is Francis Ford Coppola Winery, which normally has a great resort, but everyone did a really good job of separating and making sure that it was safe. You can see the tables here that probably during normal times you'd have it much closer, but at the end of the day, it's all about adapting, and we'll continue. So if you're part of a wine club, go contact your wine club member, even if it's the outside the shipment. Say like, hey, I'd love to order a few more bottles for somebody. I'd love to order a gift. Can you offer the discount, the wine club discount if I buy a few more bottles? If you're not part of a wine club, then join a wine club. Even just call up a local winery and say like, hey, I'd love to have a few bottles of Chardonnay for Christmas. These guys are all super amenable. These guys are all looking for ways to make it happen, because it's not just. There's a perception, I think, that wineries are, again, a rich person's toy and a rich person product, and the reality is that most of these wineries are farmers. They're individuals that are literally living from one season to the next, and they're employing not just a few people in the tasting room, but also all the people in the field and the people who ship things and the people who buy the products. And frankly, plus wine tastes good, and it makes a shitty year a little bit better. So
It's fun.
It does, and especially as we toast to that year and toast to the next one, and think about New Year's Eve. Hopefully the party will be really. It's just with yourself, or hopefully not alone. It's with several people that you've been living with. Let's really toast to a really special 2021. I hope it'll be an amazing one.
That sounds good to me.
yeah. Cheers to that.
Cheers, gents.
Well, on that note, I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, and we will be back on Wednesday with Tolosa Winery, and then we'll got a bunch of really fun stuff for 2021. So thanks, guys.